going to start with President Trump and the fact that somebody needs to take the shovel away, right? There's two ways to look at this, right? If you're a Trump critic and you just want to see Trump hoisted on his own petard, you are like, please, Donald Trump, keep talking about Jeffrey Epstein. Keep taking questions about Jeffrey Epstein. That was the theme of Bill Kristol's Wednesday morning newsletter. And he was reacting to a bit of a head scratcher decision by the president, right? Which is, here he is. He claims to be tired of the Epstein story. The folks around him claim to be tired of it, and yet he can't help himself. He wants to keep. And frankly, what he commented on was quite disturbing, right? He commented on the issue of Virginia Giuffre. She, of course, committed suicide, parent suicide, not that long ago. She was somebody that became an advocate for women who were sex trafficked. She was one of the Epstein victims. And the way Donald Trump talked about the entire situation on Air Force One on his way back from Scotland.
So, Mr. President, Epstein has a certain reputation, obviously. I'm just curious, were some of the workers that were taken from you, were some of them young women?
Were some of them
young women?
Well, I don't want to say, but everyone knows the people that were taken. And it was the concept of taking people that work for me is bad. But that story's been pretty well out there. And the answer is yes, they were.
Yes, they were young women?
What did they do?
In the spa.
In the spa?
Yeah, people that work in the spa. I have a great spa, one of the best spas in the world at Mar-a-Lago. And people were taken out of the spa, hired by him. In other words, gone. And other people would come and complain, this guy is taking people from the spa. I didn't know that. And then when I heard about it, I told him, I said, listen, we don't want you taking our people, whether it was spa or not spa. I don't want him taking people. And he was fine. And then not too long after that, he did it again. And I said, out of here.
Mr. President, did one of those stolen, persons, that include Virginia Giuffre?
I don't know. I think she worked at the spa. I think so. I think that was one of the people. Yeah. He stole her. And by the way, she had no complaints about us, as you know. None whatsoever.
I think it is proof that he does not understand the concern of his own base on this. There was no empathy for her. There was no empathy for the victims. Instead, and in fact, it was a bit jarring. He said that the reason he kicked Epstein out is he kept poaching employees. He was mad that he was poaching employees. He wasn't mad that he hired an employee and sexually abused her. Never said that. Now, he did say she never had any complaints here. But there was this weird missing empathy here for her, for the victims in general. In fact, this has been, I think, if you want to just look at this from a PR perspective, and a PR professional would be like, boy, there's a million ways he could be handling this differently. But the biggest thing that he has not done, and it's been, I think, it's one of those things, because he hasn't done it, folks haven't really noticed enough, is his lack of empathy for the victims of this, right? Imagine you're one of the women that were abused and trafficked by Epstein and by Ghislaine Maxwell, and what you're reading. It's sort of, you're getting re-traumatized. I know my friend Tara Palmieri, she's been on top of the story a lot. She's spoken with a few advocates and a few direct victims here. And the entire episode is re-traumatizing for people. And his lack of empathy, I think, look, I am very skeptical, right, of the there, right? I think what this story is what's out there. I don't believe there's any extra crazy underneath that's being hidden. Obviously, there's a belief that's out there. All of this sort of, we've gone through this, and I've ranted about this myself, about how essentially this has been a crowdsourced set of what ifs and beliefs that has become sort of mainstream, and I've been disappointed in so-called traditional media reporters who haven't fully explained sort of how this whole thing got started. This whole pedophilia aspect of it. There's a bit of an anti-Semitism roots to this when it comes to Epstein, and the belief, there's a reason that Soros and Epstein are sort of grouped together by many of these crazy QAnon people. And so I do think the lack of the origin parts of this, sort of how did this mushroom to the situation that we're in now. But the actual crimes themselves are bad. What we do know is bad. And I do think that he underestimates the passion in his base. They believe in a larger conspiracy, which I've made it clear how I think they've been taken for a ride on this, and maybe some of them wanted to be taken for a ride on this. But many of them come at it very honestly about concern for these victims, concern for these young women. And his lack of empathy, I do not think helps him with his own base here. And again, right, the larger issue for him on this, and I think why he fears this story so much has to do with it makes him part of the elites, right? What makes Jeffrey Epstein this perfect conspiracy for some of these folks in the MAGA right is that he's, in their minds, this is symbolic of sort of elitism, that somehow it's elites that do this, that they have no regard for people in lower classes and will just use them for sex or use them for work or whatever it is. And so there's a bit of Trump doesn't want to be seen as he was supposed to be the truth teller. He's the one that was going to take it to the elites. He's the one that was going to expose the elites. And if he is seen as being somebody who partied with the man who moved so easily in the world of finance, in the world of politics, all because he had this, he offered all these free plane rides and free this and free that, and always, made sure all of his guests were surrounded by beautiful women. Like, he was creating like he was some sort of, some sort of cartoon harem stereotype of some sort. And Trump is petrified of that truth, right? Of that, of sort of, this is the Toto moment, right? Where that's really what these files are simply going to do is like, oh, Donald Trump was one of his best friends and one of his most frequent pals. Does it mean that there's any criminality here? No, but it gets at two things, right? And this is what this reaction, and I think the door that he opened here in his lack of compassion for Virginia Giuffre in particular is that he doesn't see the victims. He sees himself as a victim of this story, but he doesn't see the actual victims. And not seeing them, I think, is look, the president has always appeared to lack an empathetic gene. It doesn't come naturally to him on some of these things.